Thank you all for coming today. It's good to be here. The title of the presentation is Dopamine Dreams. We'll get into why that's important. But I want to talk to you a little bit about my client base and the people who come in. One of the types of couples that come into my office that really excite me is I'll often have a young couple come into my office and they'll say, you know, how do we do this happily ever after thing? I look at our families, and we've just gotten married. We've been married a year, 2 years. We're not even sure if we want to have a kid because are we even going to be together? What does it take to have a happily ever after? I mean, everybody in our family's divorced, and we've seen all the pain and all the suffering. What's that about? How is it that we stay happy? How is it that we stay together as a family? What makes that work for us? Well, there's two key things. One of them is learning to turn toward each other even when times are tough. The other piece is having a sense of who you are, your own personal identity, your moral identity, knowing what you believe and knowing what keeps you true to yourself, right? I'm going to tell you a story. A young guy comes into my office, and the dark spots up there, just those are the top quartile. You can see Oklahoma here is like one of the highest in divorce rates. A young man comes into my office, and he starts talking, and he says, he starts talking, and I think to myself, I know where this is going. And he talks for 30 minutes, and I just listen and empathize, and I'm there for him. True story. And he gets to the end of his 30-minute monologue, and he says to me, I'm confident my 2-year-old son and my 1-year-old daughter will be fine without a father. Now, he wasn't contemplating suicide. He was contemplating running away with his wife's best friend. So, what is it that happens to people inside of our neurology that we would say, I can ditch my kids? I mean, who around here would voluntarily say and go, you know, in my past life, my dad was an idiot, and in this life, I don't want one. All right? So I'll be better off without a dad. There's no kid that says I'll be better off without a dad. So why would a dad say, my kids will be fine without me? What is it that happens in the minds of people that get them to the place where they make those types of decisions? Well, there's a mechanism. I call it the survival bonding reflex that happens inside of people, and we'll go in more detail about that. But there's some times when that survival bonding reflex can actually save somebody's life, right? There's other times when it destroys lives. It makes it harder for us to be in a healthy relationship. Part of that is our culture and how we condition friends and family, and how we are conditioned growing up. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tim Hager. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Tulsa. I also have a background in engineering, which gives me a different perspective on a lot of these things that most people don't have. I have Clark over here, who's been instrumental in helping and assisting in all the artwork on here. We have to thank Clark for that, a lot of the additional research that he has done. Right? And then we're going to do Harry and Sally. And Harry and Sally are two fictitious people that I've used to just as an illustrate. They're really a composite of everybody that I've been working with in a lot of ways, all right? And so, while the stories about Harry and Sally are made up, nothing about any of the examples that I'm giving you are made up. These are things that happen to real people, right? What is love? Is it any volunteers to raise and share what love is? What does it mean for you? Any volunteers? Speak up. Do I have anybody? What is love? I mean, it's not paper, flowers, and chocolate hearts, I'll tell you that, right? Love is a feeling that we get, our nervous system gives to us when we know that we're safe. When our body knows that we're safe, we feel this thing called love. Right? That's what it is. And so how do I know that I'm safe in the world? Well, how do I know that I'm loved? How do I trust that I can love you? I don't feel safe. Why don't I feel safe? Where does that come from? A lot of times when we're growing up, if we don't have somebody showing up loving us unconditionally, we can wind up in a situation as we're growing up and we think love is transactional, that the only way we get love and safety is by doing something for it, right? So those are two things that we experience around love, trying to understand. It's like, oh, you will love me if I buy you a box of chocolates. Well, the truth is when you're raising your children, and you just think about it this way, when you're raising your children, you do things for them. You never expect anything back. You just do things for them. And something interesting happens. Love grows. Just the act of giving towards somebody else creates love inside of you. And you feel that connection to that other person just through the act of giving. I want to tell you a story of love. Give us a little bit more perspective. Adam and Eve, we're just using them for framing this story, and then we'll get into Harry and Sally. So we all know the story of Adam and Eve, and they are kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and they eat the apple. Well, there is something that's fascinating that happens. We talked about the survival bonding reflex earlier. People get some massive doses of hormones and chemicals in their body that actually cause them to feel smarter, right? So there's something about that apple tree and that sin thing that they're talking about in the Bible. People, actually, it is like having knowledge. You actually think you know something. And it's a lot when we start dating someone. We meet somebody and we date them, and all of a sudden we feel connected to them. We feel it, a bond with them that we haven't felt with anybody else. It's just amazing, right? Almost like a gift from God, right? So we have those feelings come up inside of us, and then they fade after a while. After 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, these feelings fade. What happens to them? And what's that all about? Right? Where do those feelings go? Why isn't it magical for our entire lifespan? Why don't we meet with somebody and it's like magical our entire life? What's different? What's changed? Now, the survival bonding reflex, this thing that we have that kicks up inside of us, just temporary. Just kicks in. Should go into the next slide, please. So what happens is we think about the apple. We're done eating the apple, so all that initial excitement of falling in love with somebody. And I say apple, if you've ever eaten an apple straight off a tree, it is intoxicating. It feels absolutely wonderful. And then it's gone. And the only thing you left is the core, and you've got the seeds. Well, that's where real love comes from, is when you take that seed and you plant that seed in the ground, and that seed begins to grow. First it turns into a little sapling, right? And it grows a little bit bigger each time, right? And you don't walk up to this tree every day that you're tending. And, excuse my language, you don't say, where the fuck are my apples, right? You say, wow, what a beautiful tree. You look wonderful today. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're doing well. And you see the tree growing a new branch. You don't go, what's up with that? What's wrong with you? Why are you growing a new branch? You don't do that. You see a new branch growing on that tree, it's like, oh my gosh, you got a new branch. How lovely. Right? And you know it takes 8 to 10 years for a tree to produce fruit after it's germinated? And yet, so you show up for 8 to 10 years. You're just like, I'm so grateful to see you. And you should take care of that tree, just like you do your children. But we don't do that with relationships, right? Yet that's how real love is grown, is when we take and we put that time and effort into nurturing, right, that relationship and accepting our partner just as they are. So we're going to talk a little bit about the continuum of human relational bonding. So I mentioned this thing called survival bonding reflex, and that's just a neurobiological chemical thing that happens inside of us over a spectrum, right? And this continuum essentially is this process we go through, of which that spectrum, that survival bonding reflex, is a small part, small but significant part, of how we fall in love and get to know each other. And so let's see, when Harry met Sally, okay, that's my clue there, that's what I'm going to talk about. So Harry and Sally are a young couple. They fall in love with each other. And the first thing that happens when they fall in love is they get these feelings. And you see over there it says survival bonding reflex. So you meet somebody somewhere, there's an event, you say hello. You meet your future spouse at a party. You're like, oh, there's a feeling there. Yeah, there's a feeling. It's coming from somewhere. We don't know, but you got this feeling. Something about them was attractive. and the survival bonding reflex kicks in, and you're drawn toward them, and now you want to get to know them better. Ideally, as you get to know them, you will make some good decisions. Now, a lot of our decisions and a lot of these feelings come from feelings that we learned growing up as children. So if we had bad experiences as children, our nervous systems learn to navigate around those parents who were struggling. Not because our parents wanted to hurt us, but because they themselves were struggling. Right? And so we get these feelings inside of us that cause us to do things. A common feeling is if a parent isn't readily available for us, we don't learn to turn toward our parents for support and advice, we turn away. So then when we get married one day, we turn away from that spouse. Well, one of the things that we're supposed to develop when we're growing up and going through these things is a sense of moral integrity. Who are we? What do we believe? What's morally right? What's morally wrong? And so if we have a feeling that conflicts with what's right, how do I know what the truth is? Right? Well, that's where we have to have a moral foundation. That's what's so important for a lasting relationship, is knowing what your identity is, what you believe, and knowing that even if, leaning onto your identity, knowing that even if you've had a fight with your spouse, you can still turn toward your spouse and resolve that situation that you had, right? That you can turn toward them and accept them just as they are. And then you'll either do an action of some kind, right? You either get married, you break up, you do whatever, based upon whatever those feelings are that you've learned throughout your life as you're trying to navigate all this, right? So the continuum of human relational bonding involves an event, a survival bonding reflex, a history of life that you've learned and how you've come to know it, what your moral identity is, who you know yourself to be as a human being, and then whatever actions you take as a result of that. This is kind of what it looks like. We'll just show this real quick. This is survival bonding reflex. And essentially what we're seeing here is as we meet somebody, we get a little bit of a glimmer, we fall in love, and then those hormones kick in, and it makes us feel what? More in love with that person. And so we get a little bit of love blindness that goes on. That love blindness, well, it's there for a purpose. It's to make it so that whoever it is that we're falling in love with, we don't just dismiss them offhand, right? That we give ourselves a chance to know them, right? That we feel safe with them initially so we can grow closer together. And that works great if you've got common morals, common values, you know, you've got similar ways of being in the world, things that you enjoy, then it all works out great. And so as you go through this place we call reproductive love, you go into this limerence curve. Limerence is just a process of feelings that we go through and experience as we experience this survival bonding reflex. And then we go through this crystallization where all of a sudden now you feel madly in love with the person, you don't want to leave them, everything feels great, their life will go on forever. And then the hormones start kicking off. And then you go into a deterioration phase. And it's not uncommon, that's when people propose to each other to get married. Because all of a sudden you're afraid of losing each other because those feelings are starting to go away. But wait a minute, I had this amazing feeling back here about you, right? Why is that feeling going away? Well, the solution, if we get married, we'll be together forever. Right? But nobody's addressed the root cause of why is, as those feelings go away, what is that anchor that's holding you together as a couple? What is that thing that's giving meaning to your life as a couple? I actually had a couple that came into me. They went through the start of the limerence curve. They went over, got into the desperation curve. They immediately proposed to each other,